is that what they do is the pathos. They think of themselves as prophets of a sort, and I don't mean that they're grandiose. But the problem is that the nature of race is such that the issues are not easy. If you're not going to explore, if you're not going to be curious, you're going to miss a lot. All you're going to do is tell the story. So, to be perfectly arrogant, I think that we cold rationalists need to learn to appeal to the hearts of more people because we're not emotionless people. You know, I've actually made some choices from the heart that seem to have worked out pretty well,
Good
but
for
I
you.
try to hold these things off from my writing because I'm just trying to analyze. That's my thought about that. I never thought about it that way, but if you're going to do race and you're not curious, you're going to miss stuff. And there's a lot of almost willful lack of curiosity among some of the most prominent and even brilliant people who write about these things.
I think that was cogent Sigmund. I like this ethos, logos, pathos. I like that trilogy, trichotomy. I want to identify with the position that while the arguments that people like John and I are making, there are not so many people like us, are logical and are expressive of the curiosity that he sees lacking in others, they are not devoid of pathos. They are not devoid of emotion. And for me, a sense of dread that the, how does John Haidt put it, the stupidity of the discourse about race, the woke discourse about race, the stupidity of it, dread that will issue in destroyed lives, in pain, in loss, in a sense of failure to achieve our human potential. That people are wrong about these things is not just a matter of logic in my mind. That they are wrong is a matter of tragedy. And I see plenty of reason to be emotional about watching a train wreck unfold full motion before.
Some of us like train wrecks, but that's just me. Perhaps we should, have as a salient concept, not just ethos, logos, and pathos, but curiosity, discovery, right? Maybe we do need to focus and emphasize that purposefully. I'm thinking about this right now. This is just coming to my head right now, and I think when I do go home, I'm going to think about that. Let's make sure that this reader gets, to the best of my ability, right? Gets that I am curious, that I want to discover, and I want to know what they're thinking and why. Which brings me to the point of this event: how to make conversations work. How do we make conversations work? That's it.
Let me offer something for John to chew on. I mean, I think there's some general guidelines for making conversations work that I'd be interested in knowing what you think about. One of them is listening as well as talking. Listening to what's being said to you, thinking about it. One of the things that I like to do, podcast live, is, okay, the person's just, what did they actually say? Let me see if I understand what they said, and then try to recap what I understood them to say without evaluation, as a way of confirming that I actually heard what they're saying. So I think listening is really very important. I think avoiding ad hominem, that is showing a respect for the civility of the discourse such that even in the heat of argument, I don't go there with respect to this, what kind of person would say. Instead of addressing myself to what has actually been said, I now make it an issue of who are you who has said it. That's what I mean by ad hominem. I think it's destructive of the possibility of real conversation. So listening and taking the other person, your interlocutor, seriously enough to address their arguments and not their person.
That, and in relation to it, I think a valuable message is to dissuade people from something that can be hard to get to because it's tacit. So much of this is about what people believe without knowing that they believe it. There is a sense among many, even enlightened people, that when it comes to issues of what we're today calling social justice with a capital S and a J, that you stop thinking. There's nothing to think about. So you could talk to them about any number of things and they would understand that there can be both sides to the argument. But when you get to social justice, it's almost like talking to them, well, it's not almost, it's precisely like talking about whether Jesus loves you or not. Their sense is that we have discovered the truth about what social justice is, about what racism is and what it does and how it holds people back. There's no discussion to be had any more than most of us think there's a discussion to be had about whether slavery is okay. And therefore, if you're somebody who thinks that way, and it's very, very easy to think that way, then of course, you shut down in conversation, you start calling people names. I think even I might start calling somebody a name if they started arguing that we should go back to slavery. For them, it's the same thing. And so making people understand that race issues, for example, are not simple just because of the grievousness of our history. That's something that I don't think a lot of people have occasion to think about. And on my good days, I think maybe even some of the more hardened to logic about these things among us might understand that. There's always that sense that, say, history is complicated. Why didn't the Persians take over Greece, etc.? And there are all sorts of things that you can argue. How did Reconstruction happen? What went wrong, etc.? But when it comes to especially Black social history, and not Reconstruction, but especially what happened after that up to last week, everything is very easy. It's all about racism. That's it. It's simple. And anybody who doesn't understand that is missing something, or they're a racist too. Why in the world would you think that things are so simple just because people were in slavery and then suffered Jim Crow? What makes these things so very, very simple? And I think that to get people beyond whether it's a sunny day, it's not talking about how you're going to do your taxes, it's talking about these issues of social justice. And those are the ones that tend to get so derailed. Those are the ones that are ruining our universities. And I think part of it is making people understand that rationality and complexity doesn't end just because something is called social justice. It's easy to miss that.
I have yet another triad of concepts that I think about when I think about making conversations work, and that is values, attitudes, and beliefs. And I say that because we all have our reasons for having our values, attitudes, and beliefs. What we don't tend to recognize is that so do other people, right? The people we disagree with the most have very good reasons for the values, attitudes, and beliefs that are driving them to those conclusions. Recognizing that by itself could do something, right? Philosophers from John Locke to Kenneth Burke have talked about this. We can't help but see the world in a certain light, in a certain frame, in which we select certain ideas and inadvertently deselect other ideas. That's something we can't help as humans. Maybe just the recognition of that, recognizing that we can't help it, recognizing that we are all socially constructed to some degree to believe what we believe, will keep us from going at each other, right? Will keep the contention at bay, perhaps. In Essay Concerning Human Understanding, John Locke says, maybe if we just recognize this, we can stop the wars, we can stop the infighting, and just realize that this person thinks what he thinks for the same reason I think what I think. Let's start there. So that's my point about this. But I think it's time for Q&A. You guys excited about that? Okay, so I'm not entirely sure how this is working. Yes, we have people with microphones around the vicinity. So am I calling people or are you? Okay.
Okay, great. I'd like to ask, I'm going to try to keep this brief. I'm a